Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So everyone, we can raise our hands up, calling out for the mercy of Shri Shri Radha Kulakanda, Shri Shri Panchatattva. So raise your hands up, calling out for the mercy, and let's loudly together chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai, Harinam Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna. So as we announced earlier, so today our program is, right now we'll have class by His Holiness bkgoswami Maharaj. And after class, we are going to make an offering in the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, where we'll be announcing our Sankirtan scores for the year 2021. And we want everyone to be a part of this offering, and together we'll offer this score at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. So immediately after class, we'll have this short offering, and then we'll proceed downstairs for the dinner prasadam. Okay. We have a few more announcements, but we'll do it after the class about the sponsors. So, Hare Krishna. So, without further ado, devotees can, if you like to kindly move forward for the class, please. We always have more people walk in during the class, so especially near the door, we want to have more space so people can walk straight into the temple room, and remaining devotees can come forward. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Turn off the microphone? Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you all for coming in spite of the cold weather. It's good to see everybody today. And we have some festivals coming up in the next few weeks. Advaita Acharya's appearance day, and that's next week, actually. Not this next week, but the week afterwards. Then after that is Lord Nityananda's appearance day, and after that we have Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance day, Gaur Purnima. So, and spring is coming, even though it may not seem like it's spring, but it's going to come very, very soon. And the material world is like that. It goes in cycles. Wherever there is birth, Krishna says, then death is certain. Wherever there is death, birth is certain. That's the nature of this world. Sukha dukkha. It's like for those of you who study science, it's like a sine wave. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And so one has to be steady in spite of all these ups and downs. And Krishna says, Dukkhalayam Sasratam, this is the material world of up and downs. Don't expect anything different. If you have unrealistic expectations, then unrealistic means something that's not practical. You'll be disappointed. We don't want you to be disappointed, do we? So we're giving you realistic expectations based upon the Krishna conscious philosophy. So let's chant Jai Radha Madhava first, and then we will speak a little bit from the Caitanya Caritamrta. And then after that, there's going to be the book distribution celebration. Saditya Narayan Prabhu, he is responsible for so many books, and his whole team, of course. So many books being distributed. So we are very thankful to have him here. He's a godsend. God has sent him. He's like an avatar. So, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Balaba Yiri Bharadhati Vijana Malaba Giri Baradhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachaude Yamuna Tira Vanachaude Jai Hurat Umadava Kunya Bihaude Jayurad Madhua Kunya Bihaude Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Vadadhare Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Vadadhare Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Bhanachakti Yamuna Tira Bhanachakti Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravidakacharya All Sitara Sitashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Mahashila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidway Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuradam Ki Jai Jagadada Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Srimati Lasadeva Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shilabopad Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Budale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. So this afternoon we're going to be reading and commenting from at least one verse, if not many verses, of the Caitanya Caritamrta every evening at 5 o'clock, and it's slightly after 5 now, but every evening at 5 o'clock, we have this online class on the Caitanya Charitamrta that you're all invited to join in on. It's on Zoom, it's on Facebook, it's on YouTube, simultaneously. So you're welcome to join and hear the recitation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrta and the explanation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So right now we're on the 22nd chapter of the Madhya Lila. Incidentally, let me explain what the Caitanya Charitamrita is, since some of you may not know. Caitanya Charitamrita is a Bengali literature that was published approximately 500 years ago, after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left this planet, and the author is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and he resided in a place called Radhakund, actually Shaimakund to be precise, the Radhakund area. But his Bhajan Kutir was in Shaimakund, right near Shaimakund, and right next to Radhakund. And at a place called the Manasa Pavana Ghat, which, anyway, we don't have time to describe what that is. But that's where the gopis used to bathe regularly. And he associated with Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami is one of the 6 Goswami most intimate associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Raghunath Das Goswami had spent more time with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu than practically any of the other Goswamis in Vrindavan. And so he knew more about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, and every day Raghunath Das Goswami would spend several hours reciting the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, even though he hadn't met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was able to hear all these pastimes from the first-hand source, Raghunath Das Goswami, and was able to write them down, and write them down in such a philosophical way. The Caitanya Charitamrita is not simply a literature dealing with stories, but it's dealing with the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya's teaching. Lord Chaitanya, of course, is the Yuga avatar, and he came to teach the Yuga Dharma. Yuga Dharma means the process of devotional service for a particular age. Like previous ages, there was yoga. Previous ages, there was meditation. Previous ages, there was really, really opulent deity worship. Or there were opulent sacrifices. But in this day and age, it's Krishna Nam Sankirtan. And so that process of Krishna Nam Sankirtan was taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by example. And not only the process, but 3 different things like Abhideya, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. That is the tattvas, that is the categories, the eternal categories, like who we are, which is really important. It's really important to know who you are, isn't it? If you don't know who you are, then you have some mental illness. You know, you see that sometimes with people with Alzheimer's disease. They go out and they don't come back. And so the family can't let them out of the house because they don't know who they are, where they live. So basically everybody in this world has Alzheimer's disease because we don't know who we are, and we're wandering all over the place and we don't know where our home is. Think about it for a second. We all have Alzheimer's in that way. So Sambandha means basically to teach you who you are, who God is, important things like that. You may think, oh, it's more important to know different things like who's the President of the United States, who was the past President of the United States, who will be the next President of the United States, anyway, you got all this different information. Somehow or other, our brains get filled with all this information, but it's actually more important to understand who you are, what your relationship with God is, what your relationship with the material energy is, how did the world get created, how is it going to be destroyed. That's Lord Shiva for all of you who don't know. And then there's Abhideya, which means what do you do about that knowledge? I mean, it's one thing to know. For example, let's say you want to make money. It's one thing to know how the stock market works, right? Stock market? Bitcoins? You don't know. Then your whole life is useless. So it's one thing to know how it works, But then to actually know how to utilize it to make money is another thing. Just don't get cheated. And then the perfection of investing in the stock market is what? Becoming rich. What is the ultimate goal of investing? To make money. So you think the ultimate goal is to become a broker. That's what he was thinking. That's not the That's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to become wealthy. So you have to know know what the stock market is. I'm just using a metaphor here. Don't repeat what I say. And then the process of utilizing it, and then ultimately, what's the goal? To become rich. So unless we know these things, what is the use of our life? So basically, that sambandha means to know all these different categories and how they relate to each other. What's the soul? What's reincarnation, etc. And abhideya means the process of self-realization, of realizing that, of ultimately coming to the goal. And the goal is actually going back to the spiritual world to be with Krishna. Or engaging in pure devotional service within this lifetime. Realizing our nature. That's the goal. So it's very, very important. So these three things were taught by Lord Chaitanya. And in this wonderful literature, which I'm sure you can get a copy of if you talk to Aditya Narayan Prabhu, right? We have a special deal on a copy for you today of the whole Chaitanya Charitamrta. Oh, we'll wait till Gaur Purnima. Okay. We'll give a discount even today. So in this wonderful literature, which is written in Bengali, of course translated in English, you'll find all this information in the form of a story about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the particular section that we're reading right now in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is a section detailing Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami was the eldest of all the Goswamis, the initial followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was like the guru of the other Goswamis, even the guru of Rupa Goswami. And we are all followers of Rupa Goswami. Sometimes Prabhupada would say that we are Rupa Nugas. We're followers of Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami has written details on how to perform devotional service. And one of the books that contains the details which Srila Prabhupada elaborated on is called The Nectar of Devotion, which was originally called the Nectar, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Of course, there's another book called The Nectar of Instruction, which is the Upadeshamrita, which is more basic stuff. So it's important to understand these things. Even though Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the Shikshashika, there's no hard and fast rules for chanting the Lord's holy names. But there's no hard and fast material rules. In other words, you don't have to be of a certain caste or varna. You don't have to be a certain time of the day. You don't worry about whether the moon is or the sun is going to the north or to the south. Just like some devotees tell me, well, if you're going to die, you got to wait until after December 24th. So, one day, be in the hospital and say, doctor, can you keep me alive until December, till the sun starts to go to the north? Just somehow or other, keep me artificially alive, put some tubes up there, breathing apparatus. So, there are no hard and fast rules when dealing with bhakti. Bhakti can be executed anywhere, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a full moon, a new moon, or no moon. Without new moon is no moon. Or whether it's the Purnima, that's the full moon, of course, or whether it's your birthday. It doesn't matter, or what time of the day it is, because the process of bhakti can be executed everywhere and anywhere. But there are certain things, helpful hints that help us come to the perfection of bhakti. And Lord Chaitanya originally spoke those in terms of his Shikshashtaka, the 8 prayers, like beginning with Chaitodarbana Marjanam, which talks about how the chanting cleanses the heart of all the dust. And the 8th prayer culminates in discussing what absolute surrender is, just simply being interested in Krishna's happiness. So anyway, so Rupa Goswami gives us hints on how to do this. So Rupa Goswami's understanding came directly from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and now we're going to be reading something from the Chaitanya Charitamrta after my brief introduction, which wasn't so brief. That I think I'll just touch upon this one verse. Could someone operate the mouse or the meese? Mouses or mices or mice. I know it's mices, plural. Anyway. So I'm just going to recite the Bengali, and then we'll go on to the translation. I guess we can do the word-by-word synonyms, since you all can read. Hare Krishna. Okay, whoops. Hey, it just skipped. This is really interesting. This thing just skipped from one chapter to another. This is, hold on a second. The computer doesn't always cooperate with me. Sometimes computers also can fall into Maya. They're not perfect. All right, and I'll just read from there. Okay. Ajnani vahaya yadi papa upastita Krishna tanre shuddha kare the kareya prayasyata. So we can repeat the word. Let's do the word by word synonyms. Ajnani, by ignorance. Va, or. Hoya, there are. Yadi, if. Papa, sinful activities. Upasthita, present. Krishna, Lord Krishna. Tanre, him the devotee. Shuddhakare, purifies. Nakaraya, does not cause. Prayaschita, atonement. So the translation is, if however a devotee accidentally becomes involved in a sinful activity, Krishna purifies him. He does not have to undergo the regulative form of atonement. So let's talk about this particular verse. It's quite interesting. So first we have to understand what sinful activity is. I mean, that word has been misused in the Western world quite a bit. You know, someone's a sinner. I'm a sinner, oh Lord, take me away. Sin in this particular case means something like, it's called karma, something that gives you a bad reaction. Everything has an action or reaction. Of course, that's Newton's law. For each and every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So whatever you do in the material world, we're not speaking about the spiritual world, you have a reaction to. Like if you're good, you get a good reaction, and you're bad, you get a bad reaction. How do you know what's good and bad? Does anyone know? What? Well, we're talking materially now. Yeah, that's actually a good answer. She's a real devotee, we can tell. But I'm in the material world right now, and I'm not Krishna conscious. So bad things would be... Yeah, like, good, intelligent. So bad things are things that violate the strictures such as in the Manu Samhita and other Vedic literatures. Things that, let's say, harm other living entities, just to be very broad or very, just to talk about something that's very easy to understand. So then you get, let's say if I harm someone, if I see, let's say, even if I see, yet I'm going to use the example of a cockroach. Let's say if I see a cockroach and I get angry with him and I swat him, then I'm harming that cockroach, right? That may seem something like innocent. Well, you shouldn't harm cockroaches, or it's all right to harm cockroaches. And there are different punishments or different reactions for harming different types of living entities. Obviously, if you harm a cow, that's the highest sinful, not highest, but the lowest sinful activity. You get the greatest reaction. So that's what we mean by karma. It's called vikarma. Activities that get you a bad result. And you know which activities get you a bad result by looking at the Vedic literatures, right? And then there are activities that give you a good result. We're not worried about those right now. So when you do something really bad, you want to atone for it. And if you do something really, really bad, you're scared that you're going to get one of the reactions that you see in the Bhagavatam, that you read about in the Bhagavatam. I don't think I want to scare everybody right now. But you can refer to the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which has a lot of interesting information about sugarcane presses. But anyway, that are used on people. Anyway, so that's called bad karma. So you want to get rid of this bad karma. And in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, as I said before, there's a lot of elaboration on bad karmic reactions. What happens if you do something bad? And so naturally you're thinking, let me atone for it. Now in the Christian world, there are actually certain monks and certain Christians who atone for things by torturing their body. One time I was in New York, and I went to this place called Ripley's Believe It or Not. Anyone's been there? No one's ever been there. So they showed what the monks used to do to atone for their sins. And some of these things involve something called self-flagellation. They would take chains and start hitting themselves. I'm so sinful. You know, talk about a guilt trip. I'm so sinful, and they just hit themselves and make themselves bleed. Oh, okay, no more sin. Doesn't work. The reason that atonement doesn't work, and this is brought out in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is that it doesn't get rid of the desire to do the thing. So let's say I was a kid. I was. Hard to believe. But let's say I am a kid. And I did something wrong. What did I do? Steal cookies from the cookie jar or something. Glubjamins from the glubjamin jar or something. My mother told me not to. And she punishes me. That's not so nice. But anyway, she punishes. No more glubjamins for a week now. And so, okay. So for maybe the next week or two, I act pretty nice. Act nicely. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, the desire to eat glubjamins is still there, right? You don't lose that desire. So then, when she's not looking, I steal from the glubjamin jar again. So the desire is always there. In the Bhagavatam, that's described using Sanskrit as the words kunjara sochara, which means like an elephant who bathes. An elephant comes out of the water, bathes himself, and he throws dust on himself. It'd be like, or let's use the example of a child again. A child takes a bath and he goes and rolls in the mud again. Not very intelligent. So, therefore, simply doing this prayaschitta, first of all, it doesn't get rid of the reaction. You can do all the good things you want, and you won't get rid of the bad reactions you're going to get. I'll give you an example of a story in the Srimad Bhagavatam that illustrates that. There's a story of King Nriga. Some of you may have heard of King Nriga. He was a really, really good king. He did a lot of good things, gave away a lot of cows in charity to everybody, to all the Brahmins, of course. And he got a lot of good karma. At the same time, he made one mistake. And one of the cows that he gave away wandered back into his herd, and he gave it away to another Brahmin. And the first and the second Brahmin who got the same cow started arguing with each other, and eventually they blamed the king. And because of that, king had to become a lizard in his next life. So in other words, you can do all the good you want, you can do all the torture yourself you want, and you're still not going to get rid of your bad reaction. So prayaschita, this is the term for atonement, prayaschita doesn't work. Being punished doesn't work. You should tell that to all the parents. Punishing your child doesn't work. I'll tell you that again. Of course, I'm sure you're all happy with that. Isn't that true? It doesn't work. In fact, it makes the person want to do the same thing even more because it's fun getting your mother upset. Am I right? It's like a rasa, like a taste of anger, a taste of getting away with something. I mean, it's actually fun to get away with something and not get caught, isn't it? At least it was fun for me. See, she's agreed. So now you know. So, anyway, so you don't get rid of the reaction. You don't learn the lesson. It's kind of useless. So that's why I don't advocate spanking children or spanking adults or punishing adults. It doesn't work. So what does work is the process of bhakti. That's why when you do something wrong. But in this verse, Krishna says, not Krishna, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, repeating Lord Chaitanya's words, accidentally. Krishna also in the Gita says, Kontaya Pratijanahi Name Bhakta Pranashati, that my devotee will never perish in spite of, even if he commits the most abominable action. And Prabhupada said that's accidental. If you do something on purpose, you can't get away with it by chanting. Because the chanting and the process of bhakti does eradicate the reactions that you're going to get for performing any sinful activity or any, sinful we describe activity that gives you a bad result. Rather than using the word sinful, it's just overused. You're a sinful rascal. I'm a sinful rascal. We're all sinful rascals. It's a sinful world. Sinner, repent, So let's just say activities that give you a bad result. Understanding the scientific law of action and reaction, at least on the subtle platform. So, therefore, the only thing you can do is perform bhakti yoga. But you should not continue doing that same thing, because if you continue doing the same thing, it doesn't work anymore. So that's the process of bhakti yoga. You simply have to do it. Whatever your background, dina hina, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, dina hina yata chilo harinamu durilo. If one simply takes up this process, it doesn't matter what one was doing before. Tara sakshai jagai madai. And the example given by Narottama Das Thakur is Jagai and Madai. Jagai and Madai are two very important personalities. Well, they became two important personalities. They were actually born in a Brahmin family, very highly elevated Brahmin family, but by association or bad association, they became degraded. That's another important point, that by bad association, one can become degraded. By good association, one can actually become elevated. Just like I'm doing a lot of, I hate to use the word preaching, but a lot of outreach at the universities now, and I see how much bad association there is for all the young people. If you want, I was just speaking to someone last night, and this person, she was telling me that she's not interested in drinking or doing any of the, breaking the four regular principles, at least some of the four regular principles. And she said, but then I have no friends. I'm all lonely here. No one to relate to. And I said, hey, here we are. I said, we could be your friends. And I was actually thinking this is a good strategy for presenting Krishna consciousness at the university. We actually have an organization where you don't have to engage in illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. You can actually become straight edge, as they say. That's a straight edge means people who do music or people who are into modern world, but they don't perform any of these activities. But you see, there's so much pressure for people to do these activities. I mean, it's actually incredible. So, let's get back to the story of Jagai and Madhya, okay? Bad association. So they were good from a good Brahmin family. Their names were Jagadananda, Madhavananda, and they had bad association. They became basically murderers, thieves, you name it. In fact, Yamaraj, who keeps track of all these things, he has a supercomputer with some interesting algorithms. So he has this, and he keeps track of, you've been naughty, you've been nice, and he's not Santa Claus, don't worry. He knows when you've been naughty, he knows when you've been nice. Like that song goes. So he has secretaries who work for him. Yeah, Chitragupta. Hidden secretaries. Anyway, so, and these secretaries, they just got writer's cramp, or at least carpal tunnel syndrome. You know carpal tunnel syndrome is? That's a computer thing when you're typing on the computer and you get all this the pain that just goes up and down your arms like that. So his secretaries were complaining. I mean, there was so much writing that they blew out the main processor on the. Of course, in the scriptures it says that it was a pile of information that was so big it could fill a bottomless pit. So that's a hyperbole, of course. And that's a way of expressing they were really bad. Really bad. They were terrorizing everybody. And what happened, to make a long story short, or a short story long, is that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent his dearmost associates, Haridas Thakur and Lord Nityananda, out to get everyone to chant Hare Krishna. That's all he wanted them to do. He said, just go out and chant, get people to chant Hare Krishna. No philosophy. That's interesting. Lord Chaitanya, his main preaching for people was just to get people to chant Hare Krishna. When there was a time for philosophy, he had to deal with Mayavadis or impersonalists. Then he can bring out the philosophy. But otherwise, it was just chanting. Dina hina yatta chilo harinam udurilo. Anyway, so what happened is he sent two associates to just knock on everyone's door and said, chant Hare Krishna. And I'll tell you another story about chanting Hare Krishna in a second. But anyway, so they went to Jagai and Madhya, and first that happened, that Jagai and Madhya got real upset, started chasing them. And they were, Haridas Thakur and Lord Nityananda were joking with each other. Haridas Thakur was saying to Lord Nityananda, I don't know what kind of a guy Lord Chaitanya sent me out with. You're going to get us killed. You're an avaduta, And then he went and complained to Lord Chaitanya about it. And then Lord Chaitanya said, by Lord Nityananda's mercy, these two will actually be saved. So then they went out again, and at this particular point, Madhya, one of the two, he hit Lord Nityananda in the head with a pot, and Lord Nityananda started to bleed, and Lord Chaitanya got so angry, and he got ready to kill this Madhya, and Lord Nityananda interceded on his behalf. He said, you're not supposed to kill people now. That was the previous yuga. Dwarpa yuga, your business was, vinashaya chadushkatam, to kill. But this yuga, your business is to kill the demoniac mentality and to save people. So then Lord Chaitanya forgave both Madhya and Jagai, and they became great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Simply by the chanting of the Lord's holy names. So that's really the point, to get people to chant. I said I was going to tell another story. Lord Chaitanya was instructed all of his followers to get people to chant. And there's another story about how one of his followers, whose name was Gadadhar Das, not Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, wanted to get the Muslim person who was in charge of the government, the Nawab Hussain Shah, to chant. And that's kind of dangerous. It's like if you go into Pakistan right now and you go to a madras, and you want to get the guy to chant, the mullah to chant, and you go in right in the middle of the service, it'd be quite dangerous. So anyway, so he went to the Nawab Hussain Shah, and he told the Nawab Hussain Shah, actually woke him up in the middle of the night. He said, "Chant Hare Krishna." And the Nawab Hussain Shah said, I said, "I can't believe you came here." He said, "Tomorrow I will chant Hare Krishna." And then he became so happy, Gadadhar Pandit, or Gadadhar Das became so happy that the Nawab had chanted at least one time. He said, "Why wait till tomorrow? Now you're chanting the holy names now." So the point is that that's all one has to do, is chant the holy names and stop doing these sinful activities. There's no need of extraordinary measures of repentance. Well, actually, there was another story, too. There was another devotee of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. His name was Subhuti Roy. Here's an interesting story. And Subhuti Roy, I was thinking of all these stories. Subhuti Roy had a servant when he was young, and his servant was actually a Muslim. And one time he hit his servant, not too hard, but he left a little mark on the guy's back. Later on, that particular individual became in charge. He would become one of the Nawabs, and he became in charge of that whole district of Bengal. And when this Muslim's wife saw the mark on his back, she said, basically, you should punish this guy by killing him. And Subhuti Roy didn't want to kill him because he thought, he was nice to me. Other than this one instance, he was actually quite nice. So what can I do? Oh, I'll punish him by turning him into a Muslim. So in those days, like, the conversion ritual was quite easy. You just sprinkle someone with water from your water pot, and they lose their caste. That was the tradition, isn't it? If you get sprinkled with water from a Muslim's water pot, okay, I'm not a Hindu anymore. Of course, even the word Hindu, that's controversial what that actually means, which has been used during the last 200 or 300 years, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So he said, "No, I've lost my caste. What can I do?" So he went to some Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas said the only thing you could do is just get some molten lead, a molten metal, and swallow it. That's the prayaschitta. Here talking about prayaschitta. Just swallow some molten metal. And he was thinking, that's probably not the best idea, because if you swallow some molten metal, you're probably dead. I can't think of how you would live after doing something like that. So he was thinking, what should I do? And then he went to the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they said, just chant Hare Krishna. Don't worry about these things. So these are examples of how the chanting of the holy name is the topmost method of atonement. You can't even call it atonement. It's the topmost method of purification. In fact, in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's this interesting verse. Tasmat sankirtanam vishnor jaganmangala magmasam mahatam apikaribhya vijakantaka nishkritam. This verse was recited, I'll translate it in a second, but this verse was recited in the context of a conversation between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami. Now, you all know Maharaj Parikshit. He was getting ready to pass away after 7 days by the bite of a snake bird. And Shukadeva Goswami was his guru, preaching to him or teaching him or reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Shukadeva Goswami had just gotten finished talking about the punishments. And then Shukadeva Goswami, finishing the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, was asked by Parikshit Maharaj, how do people get out of these punishments, these reactions? And Parikshit Maharaj was very inquisitive because he was compassionate. A real devotee, when you hear people suffering, you don't think, ha, that is so cool, they're getting squished. A devotee wants to save everybody. If you see someone, let's say, Prabhupada gave the example, if you see someone fixing the roof of his house, and he's going to take a step and fall off the house, you don't say, let's watch, that's cool. I remember when I was young, there was one person who was attacked in New York, and everybody was watching from their apartment windows. At that time, there weren't cell phones. But now it's like that. People use their cell phones and they just take pictures of things. So Parikshit Maharaj, he wasn't thinking, oh, it's so nice that the people who are sinful get punished. It's so ecstatic. Squish them. No, he wasn't thinking like that. He was thinking, how can these people be saved? So Shukadeva Goswami tested his disciple by giving him the wrong information. Sometimes the guru will actually give you the wrong answer just to see if you're listening. So he said, by prayaschita, which is atonement, which we've been talking about. And Parikshit Maharaj said, no, it doesn't work for the various reasons we mentioned before. One doesn't lose his desire, and it doesn't get rid of the reaction either. Remember the story of King Rika? He had to become a lizard, even though he did so many good things. So tell me more. Guru Maharaj, you're wrong. So this also shows one shouldn't follow the guru blindly, because the guru may be testing someone. There's one time when Prabhupada tested someone. This is a funny story. Someone came to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I want to take sannyas. And Prabhupada said, no, I think you should get married. So then a few days later, this particular devotee came to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I want you to meet my fiancée. Just following your instructions, Prabhupada. So anyway, sometimes the guru will be testing his or her prospective disciple. So then what happened is that finally Shukadeva Goswami gives the right answer, which is that verse I just recited, Tasmat Sankirtanan Vishnor Jangan Mangalang Amasam Mahatama Bikaravya Vijakantika Nishkatam. That the best method of atonement, Tasmat Sankirtanam Vishnu, is Sankirtanam. Sankirtanam means congregational chanting and also absorbed chanting. Song kirtan. You understand? Complete chanting, actually complete chanting to be precise. But chanting of what? Vishnu's name. And Vishnu and Krishna are identical. So, Tasmat Sankirtanam Vishnor Jangan Mangalam Ahasam. It is the most auspicious, Jangan, or Jagat, it is the most auspicious, Mangalam, most auspicious thing that can be done in the universe. Mahatama Pikaravya. You should understand, O son of Kuru, because actually Parikshit Maharaj was a descendant in the Kuru dynasty. Even though normally we think the Kurus refer to the opposite side, the Kurus and the Pandavas, but they were all part of the Kuru dynasty. Mahatama Pikaravya. The great souls advocate it, and the great souls do it. Mahatama Pikaravya Vijakantaka Nishkratam. This is the best method of atonement. This chanting the Lord's holy name is the process of devotional service. So here, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing this particular verse, instructing this to Sanatana Goswami, that you don't need to do all these other processes of atonement. You don't need to drink molten metal or lead. You don't need to stand on one foot. You don't need to get spanked by your parents. Krishna's not interested in spanking you. You simply need to take up the chanting in the process of devotional service. And in Kali Yuga, Ekon Dharma, Krishna Nama Sankirtan, that's the one Dharma. That's the process of self-realization. It's very, very easy. And we have philosophy too, as we mentioned before. So anyway, all this information is given in the Chaitanya Caritamrta. If you're interested in hearing these classes every night, we speak perhaps not so elaborately on one verse, because this is the Sunday program, I'll do that. But we do reading and explanations on the Chaitanya Caritamrta. And if you hear the Chaitanya Caritamrta on a regular basis, you will understand everything about Krishna consciousness, how to perform Krishna consciousness, and what it's like to be a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, anybody have any questions? Yes. Yeah.
Many times we do things which are considered sinful. Like, also you gave the same example about cockroach. Like, we are now hiring a company to come and treat the cockroach in our home. And, uh, and I treat them whenever I see, I spray some mint oil or something so that they don't crawl over bhoga. They were that day on my altar. I sprayed them. They just fell dead in front of my eyes. And I, that time, remember last class you said they may be manjaris. So it's kind of always comes to my mind. So please clear.
Okay. That was a good question, one which I was expecting. So, in the service to Krishna, we cannot avoid absolutely harming other living entities. Like you're aware with the Jains, for example, they wear masks, not only during COVID, but pre-COVID too. Because they think that to wear a mask you avoid breathing in other living entities. But as we've learned from COVID, the living entities can pass through the mask. Especially unless you have a K95 mask, and most of the Jains don't wear K95 masks, right? So, but just seriously speaking, even starting a car, you're cremating so many living entities. Whatever you do, even eating vegetables, right? You know, a vegetable is life. Like sometimes I'll eat asparagus. Does everyone know what asparagus is? Okay. So asparagus is a living entity. And here I am killing this poor little asparagus. That's singular for asparagus, in case you haven't discovered. So everything we do, in one sense in this world, affects or may even harm another living entity. However, if we're dedicating our life to Krishna and minimizing insofar as possible, and it may be required that you have to rid your house of insects that may be dangerous, causing disease and so many things like that. So, but one should minimize that. Not that you take it as your mission to go out and kill every cockroach in creation. That you get a job with was that Truly Nolan or something like that, some company like that. But we have to be practical in this world. If a living entity is threatening us or threatening our devotional service, what's that? What was that noise? Or threatening our devotional service, then we may have to take some measures. So then it's not a sinful activity. But Prabhupada actually said, even if one's a vegetarian without offering to Krishna, you're eating sin. Krishna says that in the Gita. It's not just Prabhupada said that. Anyone who eats without first offering to Krishna first is verily eating karma. I'm not going to use the word sin. I'll use the word karma. Because you're harming another living entity. We eat other living entities. Jivasa, jivasa, jivanam. So the whole point is if we, sarvadharma prityaja, as you know, 1866, mamekam sharanam braja, aham tvam savapapebhyo mokshiyashyami masochyaha, that if one dedicates their life to God, then there's no karma if inadvertently something happens like that. But you're not planning on harming another living entity. So these are extenuating circumstances. So it's a good question. It's a question that often comes up about, obviously, whatever we do, driving a car, walking on the grass, breathing, eating, so many living entities are being affected, right? So that's why it's important for us to be dedicated to Krishna service so we don't get any reaction. And also, if a living entity happens to be affected, For example, let's take that asparagus, singular for asparagus. That is true. It is true. I'm not making up that word. So let's take asparagus. That asparagus that's being killed so you can offer him to Krishna, he will become Bhakta asparagus in his next life. Or Bhaktin, asparagini, in her next life. So you're helping so many living entities by, you take a flower. Of course, usually you don't kill the flower, but sometimes it might be. And then the plant that produces the flower, the fruit gets benefited. So you're actually not committing violence. It's not sinful at that particular point. So does that answer the question? All right, I think we should end now because Aditya Narayan Prabhu has a presentation or something? Okay, he has a presentation about book distribution. I want to thank you all for listening to a little philosophy. Understand that we simply have to engage in bhakti, but don't do any deliberate thing that goes against the principles of human behavior listed in the Vedic literatures. And then, even if somehow or other you slip and make a little thing accidentally, Krishna will forgive you. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Now we have a presentation from Aditya Narayan Prabhu about book distribution. Well, you have so many presentations.
No, I just before we start, just have announcements about the sponsors.
Yeah, make announcements.
Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you. So first, let's thank His Holiness bkgoswami Maharaj for the class this evening. His Holiness bkgoswami Maharaj ki jai. Shri Caitanya Charitamrta ki jai. Actually, it's wonderful. We are hearing from Shri Caitanya Charitamrta because now we'll have the wonderful festivals of Shri Shri Panchatattva, which is going to come. So our first festival is on 7th of February. So on 7th of February is the appearance of Shri Advait Acharya. Very well. So this Shri Advait Acharya ki jai. So it's on a Monday. So we'll have like Advait Acharya. Previous years we have celebrated, sometimes we have not, but this year we are thinking we'll have a program. So it'll be a more simpler program, but it'll start at 5 p.m. on Monday evening, and we'll start by a class. No? Okay. So we'll start at 6 p.m. then, okay, because it's a working day, so devotees can come. We'll start at 6 p.m. We'll have some bhajans. We'll be reading from Caitanya Charitamrta, and then 7 o'clock we'll have Aarti, and then after that simple prasadam. So it's a simple program, but it'll be nice to come, sing together, and then read from Caitanya Charitamrta. We'll start at 6 and 6 until 7:30. So that is on 7th of February. And the following Monday, so it's 2 Mondays, right? So following Monday is the appearance day of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Hari Bol! Sri Nityananda Prabhu ki. And my experience is Nityananda Prabhu is like the most merciful festival of the year, and it's always so ecstatic and so blissful. So please do not miss this. This is 14th